Great. Well, welcome everyone. So glad to be here with you and so thankful for my friend Space who's joining us today and talking about like the whole world. And we haven't really touched on this very much in the writer's block. So I'm really excited for this opportunity because I love talking about it, about this intersection of writing and entrepreneurship. And Space has a great story, and she is an entrepreneur. I think maybe kind of a reluctant one, right? Or a surprise one. Like, I don't know that that's what she's envisioned God doing in her life, but that's what she's doing. So I'm gonna take it over to you, Space, and let you give us a little bit of background about your business.
So in 2007, I accidentally started a business making soap because we were homeschooling. And then it was actually the first year that I had like finances to work with because we joined a charter school and we lived in California at the time. And the way that they did it was basically a teacher would like I would meet with a certified teacher. I would make sure I was covering everything weekly, like or like monthly. She would check in and make sure all the subjects were getting covered. At the end of the year she would test my kids, make sure that I was legitimately teaching them stuff. But also they would give us funding for different art supplies and stuff, and we were pretty poor at the time. So it was like my first year getting really excited because I had like the funds to be able to buy art supplies, to be able to do cool things with my kids. And so I kind of went crazy and we had the most fun homeschooling year of our lives. And one of the things that we did that year was we studied how the colonists made things, and then we made them ourselves. And one of the things that we made was soap. And we also made salve that year. We studied herbal medicine and we made salve. And both of those things became the birth of Space Cadet Soaps. And it's funny, like Kara was saying, like I was kind of a reluctant, accidental entrepreneur because I have never felt like a very good manager of anything. Like I'm pretty ADD and have a really hard time, like even just keeping my house orderly or my schedule orderly. And so I've learned a lot in 16 and a half years or 16 years. It was the end of 2007 of by running this business, but it has not come natural for me to be in charge of something like that. So anyways, but I've also learned a lot about writing and publishing through the experiences that I've had at running and adapting to being an entrepreneur or a business owner. So
Yeah, I want to get to that. So, because it's an interesting mix of, you know, entrepreneurship and writing, but God's given you both of those things to steward. And even though you say you're not a very good manager, obviously you are because you've been doing this for a long time and God has increased your boundaries. So, what do you feel like are the your greatest strengths and weaknesses when it comes to your business and running a business?
uh, my greatest weakness has been my ADD, but also one of my greatest strengths. But I would say that my greatest strength is just that I really value people, and um, so I'm very personable, and so people are drawn to my product because of my personality and my care for them, and that I see people. I think I asked God at one point to help me see His image in everybody that I met, and I think He's done a really sweet job of honoring that prayer, of just helping me to like to um, to see people and to appreciate them as image bearers of God who deserve to be cherished. So, and I
Oh,
think that comes out in the way that I deal business wise. So,
well, I mean, what greater thing is that? Like, I think that's so great, and maybe one of the reasons God has really blessed you. And I mean, I think that's a lesson too to adapt in our writing life is because to think of the people, the actual people that are reading your words and connecting with them. So what do you think? Like how does this writing life intersect with your business life, and how have you managed to figure that out? Because I think that's really hard. I'm doing the same thing and not making soap, but managing online spaces. I have a full-time job as well. And so I find it
Yeah.
really hard. Like I'm still trying to figure out that balance of work and writing and leisure and, work, doing the things I have to do and the things I want to do. So
Yeah.
how do you manage that?
Um, well, I think you and I are both blessed by the seasons of life that we're in where we don't have little kids at home. Um, and I think that one of the things that I've had to learn along the way is to say no, uh, to be okay with saying no, and to kind of just look to the Lord to set my schedule, to learn how to to let him lead me in the things that he wants me to be doing, instead of feeling like I have to jump at every opportunity
Mhm.
that I have. And um and I think just understanding what we're called to versus what sounds good. Like I'm not sure. I've never like taken official Enneagram test or whatever, but I'm either a 4 or a 7. And I'm like very much of both of them, right? Like very much like the romantic daydreamer, like a ponderer, deep muser, and also very much like, oh, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And so I remember in my 20s, especially, just realizing like you can't go to 2 parties at the same time. Like it doesn't work like that. Like that's not even possible. And so I think I've had to learn along the way, like you can't do everything. You can't be all things. And so like learning to accommodate my own inabilities. Like I said, like my ADD is my greatest weakness, and part of it is like the benefit that that's been to me is to slow me down and to teach me what to say yes to, instead of putting one more thing to juggle in my brain, because my brain doesn't handle that very well. Um, and so if I try to take on too much, then I just make myself crazy. And so learning how to to let go of the things that are making it so that I'm incapable of doing what the Lord has wants me to do, instead of just saying yes to all the things that sound appealing to me. So, does that
Yeah,
answer
but
your question?
well,
Okay.
yes. And I think there's so much wisdom in that because, yes, we do need to learn how to say no, but how do you learn to say yes? Because I think sometimes the flip of that is like I said earlier, the things that you have to do and the things that you want to do. And that's, I think, sometimes a harder thing for me, at least, because it's like I want to spend more time writing. Um, I'm not self-employed. So I think that's probably a little different because when you're self-employed, it's all up to you, right? And so do you feel like your work gives you more freedom to write, or is it just kind of that they work together in some way in which they kind of shake hands for you?
Um, I think that my flexibility in my schedule is a huge blessing, as far as that goes. And that there have been a lot of ways that my soap business has empowered my writing life. But I don't think that it changes the dynamic that much. I think as you were asking that, like as you were talking about what how do you know what to say yes to, the thought that came to my mind was that faithfulness needs to be a really high priority. That when I start to fail is when I let all of the things cripple me with like I just kind of go into like not just writer's block, but like life block, where I'm just like, I just want to like run away and do things to distract myself from how overwhelmed I feel. And I think what the Lord usually reminds me in that moment is that faithfulness is what he's after in me, that he just wants me to like pursue him and do what he has for me to do, and to not hide and put my head in the sand. And right now I'm kind of preaching to myself too, because I'm in a season where I feel like that. And really it's because I just finished this manuscript and now I have to write a book proposal and start to do that whole thing. And it feels almost like I just climbed this massive mountain for the last like 7.5 years, and now I'm standing at the base of another one that looks just as big and looming and overwhelming. And so I just kind of want to like put my head in the sand and pretend like I'm all done. And
Yeah.
but the Lord just keeps reminding me, like, no, I haven't called you to the end result. I've called you to faithfulness and moment by moment trekking with Jesus. So
Oh, that's so good, Space. I love that because it is often a very simple answer, right? About being faithful. Simple, not necessarily easy, but simple. So when you think about like, so you've been in business, did you say 16 years?
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The
What?
only thing I've longer is been a Christian, been a wife, and been a mother. I think. I think that's it.
Yeah. So
So
you've been doing this a long time. So how do you feel like your business has changed you and what has God taught you over the last 16 years, if you can sum it up?
um, faithfulness, and just to trust Him. Like that, I think one of the things is that like that we are created to walk with God and do the thing that He calls us to do, and He's not calling us to do like to figure out the end result, to produce the thing. Like He wants to produce whatever He's like Ephesians, right? So it says like we're not saved by works, so that no one can boast, but that God has created these good works for us to walk in. Um, that basically that it's His doing through us, and that it's not us needing to figure it all out and to have everything. Like, I think I'm not wording this very well, I'm sorry you guys, but I think that if I was in it to start a business, if I was in it to make money and have this successful, thriving thing, then it wouldn't be what it is, because my eyes would have been on the wrong goal. And instead, it was like, okay, this is what the Lord's given me to do, this next step. And maybe there are people that are wired differently than me, that they're like, their vision is, maybe they're more farsighted or whatever, not farsighted, but the far side of where you see, like they're looking further down the road, and
Looking in
that
the
is where,
distance. Yeah.
yeah, and that's their North Star. But for me, it really needed to be moment by moment faithfulness, living with an open hand, knowing that at any given moment He might ask me to stop, and that there'd be a lot of disappointed people that are dirty and stinky and wish I was still making soap, but that it's never been about the thing that I was producing, but about walking with the Lord in the thing that He created me to do.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I love that. So when you think about it, there are quite a few people who really talk about how, and I think there's a really good biblical case for it, is that God has he told Adam and Eve to fill the earth and subdue it, and that a lot of that is about um, our creativity and the energies that we put forth into our creative endeavors, whether it's making soap or writing words or coaching clients on calls or writing books or whatever that is. Like that is part of like God's creative order for us, is to fill the earth and subdue it. And so do you think of that? Do you ever think of that as like God calls us to be entrepreneurial in the work that we do, whether it's like a physical product like what you're doing, or maybe a word product like the rest of us? Do you think we're all
um, I,
entrepreneurs?
I mean, I think that in a way, yeah. I don't. I think that we're in a in an even more unique. Like I've never thought about it in the way that you were just communicating it, Kara. But what I have thought about is that as writers, we're leaving a legacy of words, and that we get to shape generations to come. And so it's not even like, in a sense, I'm filling the earth right now with something that's very temporal. People use a bar of soap, it's gone in a month or 6 months or whatever, um, depending on how often they bathe and whether they're using it as hand soap and all these different, like, whether or not they leave it in a puddle of water. Um, but but what we have the opportunity as writers to do is to leave something that's far more lasting, where we get to disciple generations. Then, depending on how, obviously, how well we write it, or how what God does with our writing, is how far reaching it's going to be. But you look at somebody like Charles Spurgeon, and his words are still shaping probably every generation from now until Christ's return. Um, and so it's a beautiful gift that we've been given in such a sacred honor, to get to write for him. And it seems to me to be so much more precious and important. And again, I think, going back to the like entrepreneurial, it's funny because it's like actually in part of what I was going to share with you guys on Thursday is that I really, have never felt like a business owner or an entrepreneur. So that word, even just like rolling it around on my tongue, it feels so funny to me. And I know that that's what everybody else would define what I do as. But I feel like I'm just an artist that makes money at what I make. And I'm fortunate because people like my product and they give me money for it, and I get to make friends over soap. And it's
Well,
beautiful.
and I think though you're leaving a lasting impression, even though your product may disintegrate over a course of weeks or months. But you are like, I think that that is part of your legacy too, is that you're leaving, you're engaging with people in a personal way that leaves a legacy.
You're absolutely right, Kara. And I feel so often like my soap business is like a front for my missionary work. Like I'm
I
like,
love
I
that.
seriously, I'm like, I am like constantly so um like I sell at craft fairs and music festivals. That's one of the avenues that I sell soap at. And I love when my husband comes with me because we make the perfect like tag team, because one of us can be doing the business side of things while one of us is talking to somebody about Jesus. And it's like all day long we get to like pay attention to like which one of us is now in a deep conversation about the Lord. Okay, so now it's my turn. I have to be the person that's like paying attention to like people that are trying to hand me money and take my soap. But even when it's just me, that's like I kind of feel like a cruddy business keeper, because there's people like backed up behind these people that are trying to like sniff over their shoulders because I'm talking to them about Jesus and not paying attention to the person who's trying to buy soap. Oh, oops. Sorry, guys.
Well, I love that
Um,
too, because it's a good segue into what you had mentioned to me earlier, was that, Paul used tent making as a front for his missionary work too, right? So
mhm.
how do you how would you encourage someone here who may have entrepreneurial aspirations or has a business already? Like, what kind of wisdom would you give to somebody who's like thinking of something or has something already in process of how to use that as a tool?
I mean, I think you just have to have your aim set right. Like we have to be pointed toward the North Star. Um, and if we are like, I'm kind of getting into like I'm kind of gonna be teaching on this on Thursday, so I feel like I don't know how much to say or not say, but my mission statement has always been the greatest commandment. And so and that affects everything about the way that I run my business, because that's my purpose in running it, is not to make money. It's not to make it. I do like making people's lives better with good soap, but the real like crux of it is that my mission and our mission as Christians is to love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think that we as writers have such a beautiful opportunity to use words to do that. And even in fiction writing, because I know for me, like sometimes what I need is a respite from like, not to like escape in a toxic sense where I'm just like looking at my phone watching YouTube videos that don't matter, but in like a real like soul rest. Like my son got married. We have family spread all over the country. So our whole family was coming from all four corners of the country. And somebody gave us a cow that had a broken hip that needed butchered right then. And all the butcher shops were backed up like the month before he got married. And I went to California for a week to see my mom and stepdad. And our kitchen was under a remodel, and my husband was the one, not like hiring it out, like my husband was doing it. He poured concrete countertops and didn't sand them until the very last second, so I couldn't even clean my house until like 3 days before everybody showed up from around the country, which is an insane month, right? And I'm trying to run this business at the same time. So during that month, do you know what I did for rest? I read the entire Harry Potter series because she's a really good writer, and it was really nourishing to me. Like I didn't sleep very much. I read like 6 novels, very thick ones. And so anyways, sometimes I think even fiction writers are offering a service, like we don't see it or think about it. And there's also like other, like I think about this book called Momo, which is probably my favorite juvenile fiction book out there. And it's such a purposeful book. Like it's written so well, and it makes you want to be a better person from reading it. It's written by Michael Ende, by the way, who's the guy who wrote The Neverending Story. But anyways, like I think even fiction writers, don't discount yourself if that's your category or genre, because we all have such a beautiful opportunity to leave words that really bless and encourage and aid the kingdom and help people. And even if it's just giving them a good time of rest when they're in the middle of butchering a cow and remodeling their kitchen and preparing for a wedding, you know.
Oh my
Anyways,
gosh, that's a perfect storm for sure. And it always convenes like over a big event like a wedding or something like that, right?
it
So
was nuts.
Space, how have you figured, I mean, you're a self-professed ADD person who struggles to manage things, but like I said, I think you have obviously done that better than you think you have. How have you managed to do all the things like homeschool your kids and write
Mhm.
this book over this last 7 years of your life and run a business? How have you figured that out? Or have you?
By adding one ball at a time to the juggling, you know, like I've been very, very intentional at recognizing my own strengths and weaknesses and being honest about them, and not trying to do more than I could, because it was more important that I was able to do it well than quickly.
That's really good. Like one thing at a time, right? Like we don't have to, throw up 5 or 7 different balls at the same time, but just keep adding one thing at a time,
Yeah.
prayerfully probably as well.
Yeah, very prayerfully. And also, when I started writing, I stopped, for the most part, taking on new soap accounts. Like, I mean, not entirely. And then at one point, I started praying and asking God to give me an employee, because I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I'm gonna retire if I don't have help. And the Lord gave me a couple of very dear friends. One of them is like somebody that she can do pretty much, she thinks like me, and we dance together really well. And she like, I'm about to go out of town for a couple weeks, and so I just sent her with a couple tubs of soap, and she's going to take care of the online orders for me. And she comes and makes soap. Like, she was at my house last Wednesday making soap with me. And um and so I'm very thankful, because just knowing like what I can and can't handle. And I was at a point where I was like, Lord, I can't handle um I can't sustain like this unless you give me the right person. And he
Yeah.
was super grateful.
So has your business freed you up to do some things? Like you said, you're about to do some travel and you have somebody helping you.
Yeah.
So sometimes it helps us if we're kind of sitting on the fence about business in general, like to think about, to think beyond like the pain of getting started and all of the work that's involved with that, but to look beyond that and be like, well, I'm doing it to free up some more time. Like the only two things that like commodities we really have are time and money, right? And so generally that's what we're working towards is we want more money to free up more time, or we need more time to make more money. So has your business given you either or both of those and given you more freedom in your maybe
Yeah.
creative pursuits?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I uh, have been able to use the soap money to fund a lot of different like writing endeavors and writing uh, like I in last October ended up going to a intimate workshop with Donald Miller and Ali Fallon, and it was like a
Mhm.
really pretty pricey thing that I would not have been able to do if I didn't have this business that was putting money into our family's budget. Um, and it's really cool because, like I said, I've got a couple friends that are helping me now. So at this point, it's benefiting three different families. Um, financially. And it does, when I take road trips, I have this giant sticker on the back of my car and I give away a lot of soap on the road, or I'll bring it and like maybe try to get it into a store or something. And so it's a tax write off too, which is really cool. Just saying,
Nice.
tax write
Yeah.
offs are
I can attest to
so,
that, you guys.
um,
Space and I went
yeah.
to a conference together a couple years ago, and she just had soap in her bag, and she would just give people soap. It was really sweet, and everyone was always. And then she gave me a bunch of too. And if you haven't checked out her website, is it spacecadetsoaps.com?
Mhm.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
should check out her website, and she's got a lot of really wonderful fragrances and soap. So that's really fun.
And it's really fun because it really like you can make somebody so much happier than it actually merits, right? So like it doesn't cost me a ton of money to make a bar of soap and to give it away, but the like joy factor in the people that are receiving it, like I remember just recently I was at a craft fair and I gave somebody a bar of soap and I just knew like the Lord just put it on my heart, give that person a bar, and I did, and I kind of just had a feeling that it was very like specific. Like this person, I mean, I feel compelled to give soap away regularly, but this one, I just thought she really needs this encouragement. And she almost started crying. And she told me that somebody, like, I think her brother or somebody had just died in like the day before. And it just meant so much to her, this like bar of soap that to me was not a lot of sacrifice, but to her it was like somebody noticing her and caring about her, and it was like a hug from the Lord um, to her. So it's fun to have a product, and I think that we do the same thing with our stories, right? Where we're sharing a part of our soul when we're sharing our stories with people, and to us we're just putting words on a page, and we're doing what the Lord has called us to do, and to some degree of vulnerability we're sharing part of ourself with somebody else, but that somebody else, it could be life changing. Like it could be
Mhm.
like that person was suicidal and they just knew from reading a couple words that you wrote that they weren't alone, and it brought them
Mhm.
past the precipice, you know. And so it's like we don't really have the power over how our art transforms people's lives. We just get to create it. Like we're this is what we've been given to do, so this is what God has purposed us for. And we
I
may
like
never know the side of each, but at some point you know
I
it
love
might
that you
really.
said that. I hope that we all take that to heart, that like the words that you have is like it's like your art form, it's your gift, right? And
Mhm.
the same way maybe it's not a physical tangible gift, but that is a gift that you give to someone else, and God gets to choose how it's received and how he uses it. And maybe we'll find out in heaven someday what those gifts meant to other people. Um, I want to give everyone who's on this call an opportunity to ask questions. I'm curious to know, like, who here is got some sort of business or idea or anything like that. I'd love for us to be able to just kind of bounce ideas or share whatever God wants you to share. But before we do that, Space, can you give us an overview of what you're going to talk about on Thursday?
Um, uh, well, a lot of it is about how, like I said, my mission statement is the greatest commandment, and about how that has affected and played out in my business, and what we as writers, like what I personally have learned from running this business and living that mission statement out in the venue of soap making and soap slinging. But really like how it affects the way that I view my writing life. Because I think that if it wasn't for this business, I would have the conventional wisdom. Like I had a friend tell me, who was working at a natural food store and was like the person that would order my soap. She told me, you should teach a business class. And my first thought was, that is ridiculous, because I do everything the opposite of what people tell me I'm supposed to do. Like, this is not like, I am not like the classic conventional wisdom business model. But that has helped me so much in my writing life, because there's so much like feedback of like, you have to have all these email subscribers, you have to do all of these things. And we can get our eyes off of the real goal, which is to honor Christ.
Mhm.
And so we end up getting like so sidetracked by all of the things that conventional wisdom teaches. And really, God just wants us to walk with Him faithfully, and to let that play out, and as He has created us for this good work, that we would um, walk with Him in it. So,
Well, that's kind
anyways,
of, that boils it down, right? Like when you say your mission statement is the great commandment, like, yeah, that sums it up, right? Like love God and love others. And that could be through soap making or writing or
yeah,
whatever, means God has
and,
given you.
and oh, sorry, Kara.
Go for it.
Yeah, and it's love your neighbor as yourself too, to where it's like we do have to tend to our own souls in the process of writing. Like if our objective is just to produce something, then a lot of times we get lost in the midst of it. And um, and like, if I would have had my goal be, I want to start this business so I can make a lot of money so that my family is better off, because we were really poor when we started. We were living a family of five off one labor worker's income. And it was a labor worker who also had insomnia, who was self-employed. So his hours were a lot smaller probably than they would have been if he would have like not had such a hard time getting to sleep at night. And so he would like sleep in and start his days later in the day. And we were, just like a pretty impoverished like family. Um, and so it would have been easy for me to start off like wishing for a better life, financially. And I think that because really it was just, I saw what the Lord was doing, and saw like, oh, He wants me to keep creating this thing. Then it made it so that I didn't lose myself in the process
Mm-mm.
too. I didn't lose, um, like, does that make sense? I mean, like,
Well, I think
I think,
I have a similar story in that I started my business to help our family who is struggling financially too. And at first, my objective was I need to make money to help my family. Like that was the driving factor, right? But over the course of that, like God opened up my eyes to be like, no, this isn't just about making money. Like this is about serving people. And also it's really satisfying as a woman to like, especially when you're home with children or you're more confined to your four walls for whatever reason, to have something that's your own, and maybe you experienced that too in those years when you were feeling very impoverished, that when God gave you this soap business, he was giving you something that, like, in addition to your children and homeschooling, for you to manage, that was yours. And that feels kind of good. Like, it gives you a little bit more, not that children aren't already a wonderful purpose to have, but it kind of gives you another focus and another way of blessing your family. And it blesses us in the process, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I still have the first rug that I bought, or the first thing. It was a rug, like an Oriental, not like a real Oriental, but like Oriental, like decorated kind of looking rug. That was the first thing that I ever bought with soap money that wasn't soap oils. And I just felt like such a big deal, like buying that for my husband for Christmas. He doesn't
Yeah.
love it as much as I do. He's kind of like, yeah, it's
But
just
it
a
was like a
collection for dog
symbol,
hair. I'm like,
right?
you're not getting rid of that rug. Yeah, like, this is really
Yeah,
special to me.
that's
So,
sweet. That's really sweet. Well,
mhm.
I don't want to overlook, there are a few comments. Carrie, I know, has loved your soaps in the past, and she said she gave them to the women at her retreat and they loved it. So just another little plug for Space
Thanks.
Cadet Soaps. Um, yeah, so ladies, feel free to unmute. We'd love to hear from you. Like, what the whole idea of this week was talking about unconventional wisdom. Like, I think Space is like the perfect person for that. Um, and how God has blessed her business and her writing, because she's not like followed conventional wisdom. Sometimes God gets more glory. But do you all have questions or thoughts, or any businessy related things you want to share?
I'll share something fun. As like if while you guys are thinking, because this I thought was really cool that we were leaving home. So we're on one running vehicle at the moment. And so my husband dropped me off here, and right before we left home, I got a phone call, and it was just somebody who had ordered a jar of salve online, and when the post office dropped it off, the lid got broken, and they called, and I said, oh yeah, I'll stick one in the mail. I'm headed to the post office right now, no problem. What's your address, and I hung up the phone, and my husband goes, and that's how you get repeat customers. And I was like, that's really funny. Do you know what I'm teaching on? And he was like, no. like like it's really appropriate, like, because it was just a simple, like, way to use something that I had to bless somebody else without making it a big deal. And
Yeah.
I was just, and without like charging them for the replacement lid or whatever. Like, and I just think that so often we we try to hoard what we have, and I think that that has been one of the greatest, like, lessons for me in this business, is that God has given this to me to hold it with an open hand,
Mm.
and that it is really just to be a blessing, like, not to acquire what I think I need, but to trust the Lord that He's going to meet my needs, and that I just get to try to, like, simply um, enhance the lives of other people. And anyways, I just thought that was kind of funny timing to be walking out the door, and then to have my husband like overhear that conversation and say that, because I was like, I wasn't trying to get repeat customers. I was just
You're
trying to make
just
sure that they
trying to,
didn't have a busted label, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. It's sometimes really simple. What do you feel like have
Yeah.
been the greatest challenges in terms of business? And like, have you ever really, I know you said earlier that you needed help so badly that you were ready to throw in the towel. So that's a hard thing. And sometimes it's hard to know, like, when is the right time to do that,
Mhm.
because not always is it like, oh, I'm flush with money, so therefore I'm going to hire help, right? So do you feel
Mhm.
um like that's been one of your greatest struggles, or trusting the Lord to provide, or where do you feel like that that lands for you?
Just remembering, I mean, I think I realized that sanity matters a lot more than money. And so just making sure that I keep myself sane in the process. And sometimes that means like, making bigger decisions. Like somebody asked me if I can sell my soap in their store and saying no. But sometimes that just means not, not like realizing when I'm getting snappier with my husband. Like if I'm like at home and I'm like, yesterday I was pretty overwhelmed, and part of it is just perimenopause, which is a real beast. Um, and so I don't know if you guys have had the pleasure of meeting my friend Perry, but she's a cuss word. Anyway,
Which
so she's a real pill.
Yeah,
So
we don't
so it
welcome Perry all the time. Yeah.
yeah, like all your hormones deplete, your body starts falling apart, and you get moody. But anyway, so I think that there's a measure of like in different seasons of life. Maybe this season it's perimenopause that makes it harder, but in other seasons it's like it's making sure that I'm still present for my kids when they were growing up, and I was still able to homeschool them, and just being able to make decisions based on sanity rather than on opportunity um,
Hmm.
has been a
Yeah, and
help
that
and a
that gets
challenge.
hard sometimes, right? Like when you're like turning down business or things like that. That's hard. And you said earlier, like learning to say no. Like sometimes you're saying no to good things.
Hmm. Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
okay because when we say no to the things that God doesn't want us to, then there's more space for the things that He does want us to.
For sure.
So
For sure.
um,
I loved how you,
I had another. Oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say, I love how you
Sorry.
called your business a front for
Yeah.
sharing the gospel. My husband and I drive around, and anytime we see a business that's clearly open but never has anybody, we're like, that's a front. Like it's a running gag in our marriage of and so I started thinking about that as you were talking, and like I struggle with creating a product that is easily accessible for the public. Like what I want to create and what would get the door open aren't always the same thing. And so, I think even within writing, you talked about how Harry Potter was this comfort to you and how stories can be a comfort in that time. And it's true for me too. Like there's so many books that I've read that have just been there for me when I couldn't be there for myself. And I think that that's something I'm going to have to explore, because there's definitely market out there for that type of writing if I'm willing to make it my front.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's more about what we were created to write than it is what the market is there for. Because God will open the doors for whatever it is. Like you think about the impossible things that He did for Israel in like Judges and Kings and Chronicles, and it was really because they had faith. And it wasn't because the Red Sea was a dry pathway. It wasn't because Jericho's walls were made to topple like a Jenga set. Like there were these things that were just like absolutely counter to everything natural, and um, yet Moses had the faith to point his staff at the Red Sea and watch it split. And Joshua had the faith to march Israel around Jericho for a week straight. And Israel had the faith to walk in silence and then blow their trumpets and scream. And I think that so often, like, what God is requiring of us is that we would listen to His sweet, still, small voice, and that we would walk in obedience to that thing. And even if it doesn't produce the results that we would like it to, like even if, like, I think that Like, so I've been writing this book for the last 7.5 years, and I think if I don't put the effort in to get it published, that will be my failure, not because I'm not supposed to. I feel strongly that this book would be a blessing to a lot of people, and I don't think that I'm saying that from a place, like, I think the 7.5 years have been super good for refining my soul, because I think my motives were a lot different 7.5 years ago than they are today. Um, but I do think that, like, that I have to be content with 10 people reading it versus 10,000 or 100,000 people reading it. That no matter what, like, those 10 people, it could be the thing that saves their lives, and those 10 people could be the next greatest missionaries that this world has ever seen, and they got saved because they read something that I wrote. Or like, it's like we really just, I think, have to trust the Lord with whatever the outcome is. And I know that that's unconventional. Like, I'm a business owner that didn't start with this idea that I was going to have this thriving business, and it's not a huge business. I mean, I sell in like about 20 different stores and online and at craft fairs and stuff, but it pays the bills for sure. um and it's a huge blessing, but it's just because this is what God um made me to do. And so I feel like I'm rambling. I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't have drank that second cup of coffee, I think. So
I
I guess
like
I'm
the
supposed to
rambling.
ramble today. What'd you say?
I like your rambling. And if I could just ask,
No.
I am so drawn to your gentle spirit and your call to all of us to walk in faithfulness. And I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit back to the beginning when you learned those practices of listening to God and walking gently with Him, regardless of the outcome. What were there things that you practices that you had or things that you did to help cultivate the heart that you have?
Good
Oh man,
question.
Karen, thank you. um I think different seasons of life have taught me different types of those lessons. So I used to hitchhike the country. I know it's funny, isn't it? I say that kind of nonchalantly, but 26 years ago, I picked my husband up hitchhiking, and we hitchhiked for a year. And I think that we really both had to learn right away to listen. Like, we got saved a week and a half after we met. But I think both of us really had to learn to listen intently for God's leading. And, like, because we could have ended up in a bad hitchhiking ride if we hadn't. And then I remember as a young Christian overthinking everything, and the Lord just leading me to the passage where it says that God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. And realizing, like, if He's filling me with peace, that's probably the decision I need to make. Like, not to overthink it and to go, like, because when I overthink things, I tend to confuse myself and get really overwhelmed and anxious. Um, and so I think those two seasons of life were helpful for that. But then also, I went through a really, really severe um, year of extreme spiritual warfare and depression, and just internal, like it felt like a year where God was very silent, and it was excruciatingly hard. And I was suicidal, and my life started falling apart at the seams, and um my marriage, like, all but collapsed, and it was just brutal. Like, it was 2015, and so it wasn't super long ago. It was actually right before I started writing this book. And I think that season was extremely good for me, because it taught me, like, I went into it a hopeless extrovert that did not know how to be alone with God, and I came out of it loving solitude, because I had felt so alone. And then I found that when God did make Himself seem real to me again, that He was closer than He'd ever been, or at least felt closer than He'd ever been. And I think also through that season, one of the things that I was really convicted about was that um, I had learned early on to not make the Bible into a legalistic thing, where it was like I would beat myself up if I didn't get up and read the Bible first thing in the morning. But I was raising 3 little boys, that were super exhausting, and like hell-bent on ending up in the morgue or the ER by the end of every day. And so it was like all day long I was like running frantically trying to like keep them alive and safe. And so God gave me hunger to get into his word, but it was like stuffing it in small pockets of the day. And I think that that seeing his, like I had this experience where when my kid was a teenager, I was telling somebody the story of what it was like to try to get into the word when they were little. And Forrest was like, yeah, I remember that. I would always look up from breakfast wanting seconds, and I always knew that I would find you in your room kneeling over the Bible. And it was like such a big deal to him because food was his like most precious thing. And so to see his mom sacrificing breakfast to read the Bible was like a really life-changing thing. And I realized that the thing that I had felt guilty about, which was not getting up an hour early and doing the whole like sacred morning time, was actually something that God was using to teach my kids about the sacredness and preciousness of his word. But I realized during that year that I also had used that to justify not making it a top priority in my life, that like I needed to have that be the first fruits of my day. And so I think that I've like learned in the latter part of my life that needs to be the thing that comes first. And I think that's really helped me in my writing life because it's pushed my soap life back. So it's like I can do like, I mean, I still have a lot of deliveries to make and I still have soap to make and all this, but I don't start my soap making day until I've spent the first, like the morning hours in the word. And so that I think is really like God's mercy to me, and probably the reason why I'm able to do both, because I don't think that I would be living a sustainable lifestyle if he wasn't compelling me to make that the thing that comes before all the other things that have to take place, you know.
Thank you. That was really a
But
helpful
thanks.
response.
Yeah, thank you for the encouragement. Sometimes I just feel like a spaz. So gentle spirit is not, especially in this whole, you know, perimenopausal season, is not the thing where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so sweet and gentle spirit. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a psychopath. Like I promise, Smiles, this will be over soon, I hope. This is the season where you just have to apologize a lot more, and that's probably also good for the soul. I just hate it.
Well, I know you have a shift coming up, Space. I want to honor your time and thank you for sharing. And I agree. I think you do have a sweet, a gentle and quiet spirit, and a very, in the words of our friend Abigail, meekness, right? I think there's a meekness to you. God has broken you in many ways for his purposes, and so I think that that comes through for sure. And your ministry of soap is a ministry of God, of meeting people where they're at. So what a sweet time together. Thank you, Space. One quick announcement for anyone on this call: we're going to move Thursday's meeting back 1 hour to accommodate Space. She's doing a little bit of travel. So and I'm going to make that change in the writer's block, but just wanted to give you all a heads up. We're going to meet 1 hour later than we met today. So
yeah. Okay. Because I'm gonna my husband and I.
Diane, were you
What
going
were you
to
gonna
say
say,
Diane?
I just was gonna say I won't be able to attend on Thursday, but it's wonderful listening
I'm
to
sorry.
what you had to say. It's okay.
Well, thanks, Diane, for understanding.
Well, and there's a replay too, Diane, if
yeah.
you want to listen to that.
I'll do my best to do that.
Yeah.
It's
love
been a joy.
You're
just
so
enjoy
sweet.
listening to you.
I'm gonna be driving to Louisiana in the next day and a half.
Wow.
And so with my husband, and the earliest that I can get into the Airbnb that we have rented for Thursday is at 2 p.m. their time, so that'll be 3 p.m. Eastern. And or no, I'm sorry, 3 p.m. their time. I better make sure that I'm right about this.
Louisiana
Diane, if
is
it was an
central,
hour
right?
earlier- Yes, so it's an
So
hour,
that
so
would-
it's an hour earlier. Yep, so it's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2 p.m. Central Time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so, and part of the reason why I rented it was so that I would have a quiet space with Wi-Fi, because otherwise I'm gonna be like at a truck stop trying to talk to you guys.
Yeah, we'll make that change for you for sure.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Space. We love you.
Well, God bless you guys. And thank you, ladies, too, for making me almost cry, because I think that was such a gift to me in a season it is kind of a hard season for me as far as like my emotions go. And I am just kind of it reminded me that God is using this to produce meekness and gentleness in a season. Like, I remember when my kids were little and feeling very impatient, and the Lord was like, listen, that impatience was already in you. You just now have something bringing it to the surface so I can skim it off. And I feel like that is the season of life for me. So that I don't feel as meek and gentle as I wish I did a lot of times. So thank you for that encouragement, that you can see the Lord's work in this in ways that I'm struggling to see right now. So
Menopause is like the reverse of adolescence. It took a
Yeah.
while. It took a while to get through all that, and it takes a while to get out of it.
Yeah, that's a good
There
point.
is freedom on the other side. This too will pass.
Thank you.
This too shall pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
And
well,
I
that'll
learned-
be a fun conversation for everyone to hear on the replay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They'll be younger and scared. They'll be like, oh no, that's what I have to look forward to. Progesterone
right.
helps, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Love you,
Okay,
ladies.
thank you
Love you
all.
too.
Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.